Hey everybody, welcome to this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything here on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield. I've been covering video games professionally since 1997. So I can pretty much answer any question you got about games. I've also been around the block, and I can answer your questions about other stuff too. And sometimes that's the more fun stuff. So anyway, head on over to sifted.net. In the header there's a link you can click. You can go to our forums, ask me a question. That would be awesome. This show happens because so many of you awesome guys and girls are pledging at $7 or more per month at patreon.com/sifted. That's that Ask Shane tier. Now you only need to pledge $5 a month to get all our content early. Even if you pledge $1 over there, we love you to death. So if you like what we're doing, you want to see it continue, maybe think about heading on over there and giving us some support. Okay, question number 1 this week comes from Liberal Hack. What is your editorial philosophy on whether reviewers should be assigned games in genres that they're known fans of? Should the person who likes fighting games be the one to review the next Street Fighter? Should the person who's platinumed every Dark Souls game review Elden Ring? Reviews are meant for a general audience and not just genre enthusiasts. Or are they? On the other hand, some games like Europa Universalis really require someone who is familiar with the genre. Okay, Liberal Hack, I'm going to start off my answer with a response that I learned in journalism school, I believe in the second semester after you got past like all the prerequisite classes. Well, my first real journalism class, one of the first things I learned is that the first thing you do when you write is to write for your audience. And that doesn't matter what kind of writing you're doing. You need to make sure that you consider the people that you are writing for when you go to write anything. And that holds true when you're talking about covering video games, reviewing video games, previewing them, whatever. You need to think about who your audience is. And that is different based on every publication. So right now I run Sifted. It's not as big as the outlets that I've worked at previously. So I need to consider that when I go to program content for our audience here on Sifted. And so to answer your question within that context, on Sifted, would it be smart for me to assign genre experts to review things, or maybe somebody who's only tangentially connected to the genre? For a core audience and a smaller, like extremely core audience like Sifted, it's probably better to put the genre specialist on it. Now, that brings a bunch of issues up, which is, are they going to be unbiased while reviewing the game? Is that game organically going to get in a couple extra points because that person just likes that genre? That's possible, but that's also the job of the assigning editor to rein that stuff in. Look, I have been doing this for a long time, and I have worked at other publications with gigantic audiences that is more of a general audience, and you do have to consider that. But even there, I had writers who were working for me who were fans of things, who were fans of a genre, or were fans of Nintendo, or whatever. And generally, I will say, in those situations, I did not assign the fan to cover those games. When you start talking about a more core audience, that's when you start getting into the fandom of things. And I think then maybe your reviews are a little more helpful to that audience if you hire somebody to do a job that is like the people who are really into that genre. But when you start talking about a big mass audience, and there's only one way to have 6 million people watch your review of Grand Theft Auto 4, which is what happened on Game Trailers, it's not the core. You need people from everywhere coming to watch your videos, consume your content, or whatever. So you need to address that audience with your content. If you're creating content for a small subset of your audience, the rest of that audience is going to go away. And if you're a big outlet, you need that big audience to survive. So it is a case-by-case basis. I think it makes more sense in the situation I'm in now to have a huge Dark Souls fan review Elden Ring than it did when I was working at a bigger publication. So there's really no one-size-fits-all, but I think generally, editorially, if I could have a pure environment regardless of audience, then no way in hell I want people who are fans reviewing games. I don't want fans in general reviewing games. I want people who are just fans of video games to review games, not fans of Nintendo or PlayStation or Naughty Dog or whatever, or From Software. I just want people who love video games reviewing the video games. And in all honesty, a lot of times, if you let somebody who isn't as in with something look at something, they tend to find new angles and perspectives on those things that the other people, the fans, would not find, because they're just kind of automatically accepting certain parts of the game to be okay. So there's a lot of psychology that goes into it. I mean, I will just tell you that if you work as an assigning editor for a long time, you start to figure out the people on your staff. You can see where the biases are, and the people who are good at those jobs don't necessarily ostracize those people. They find other things that they can work on that they're going to be good at, but you let somebody else come in and kind of handle the stuff that other person was hyper qualified for. Okay, next up we have a question from Kool-Aid. Recently, Ubisoft shared that it had canceled a Civil War Assassin's Creed game where you hunted down the KKK due to the current political climate. Do you think by shying away from the moment that risk-averse entertainment companies are losing an opportunity to build heroes that audiences associate with genuine courage and bravery? Characters that go beyond vapid. In 5 to 10 years, will people care if a franchise was poorly received by ill-informed bad actors in its respective time period? Can stories in games ever become evergreen? Kool-Aid, you're coming off the top rope with a great question here. I'm actually surprised that no one's asked me anything about this, because this story is actually a couple weeks old at this point. And this is the first time somebody asked me about it. So good job, Kool-Aid. It's not an easy question to answer, honestly. But I do think one thing that you kind of gain as you get older is perspective. You look back on things that were thought to be a big deal when they happened, and then you can look at all the time that's passed in between and whether that thing was a big deal or not. So I think a good way to think about it is like looking at the stock market. So if you watch the stock market every day, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. But if you zoom out, it's those down things are very small. And overall, the curve keeps going up. There'll be little dips, but ultimately it'll keep going up. I think that's kind of how you look at it. You can't look at things in a vacuum and say that's the way they're going to be 10, 15 years from now. And generally, I will say with cultural stuff like this, it does not age well. I think that ultimately, truth wins, honesty wins, and right now we're living in a fake information world. It feels like it's okay to lie and make up facts that support your opinion. In 10 years' time, the people that are doing that are gonna look like fools. So while I admire Ubisoft for pitching the idea of this game in the first place, knowing that the political environment is what it is, because let's be honest, this isn't something that's been going on for the last couple years. It's been going on for like a decade at this point, which is just mind-blowing to me, but it has. So Ubisoft greenlit this game knowing the political environment. And now we can go back and talk about the Far Cry game that looked like it was kind of attacking this, but when you played it, it really didn't. This Assassin's Creed could have been the same way. It could have had that premise, but then they kind of soft shoe around it the whole way through the game. We don't know, because we'll never get to play the game. But the bottom line is that you are right. Making knee-jerk decisions right now over cultural issues because right now a certain segment of our society feels empowered. And let's be fair, they do represent half of sales or somewhere around there for a lot of games. So most would say that a publisher would be stupid to not at least consider that element of it. But ultimately, if you're going to look at video games as art, it's kind of interesting to think about right now. I wonder if the people who hate these types of games from Ubisoft, if they really care about that, if they really do at all. I'm sure they say they do. I'm sure they'll tell you games are art. I'll fight you to the death over that. But everything they do and say goes against the grain of treating video games as art. So you ask if there's ever going to be evergreen stories in video games. I think there are. I think they happen all the time. I think the thing is, though, is that those are games that are based on fantasy or sci-fi. Things that we can't connect to reality and stuff that's really happening. It's when you start touching on these themes that come from the real world that people get worked up and they start threatening to boycott your games and they start hate campaigns online. Obviously, Ubisoft just went through this with Assassin's Creed Shadows, where a bunch of racists and sexist and misogynists started a hate campaign against the game. The game still sold pretty well. I don't know if it sold as well as every other Assassin's Creed game, but certainly it appears that Ubisoft turned a nice profit on the game, but it probably could have sold more if it just had a bunch of white dudes in it. So, no. History is not going to shine brightly on any of this stuff that's happening right now. It's like I said, it's a little blip right now, and when you zoom out and you look at history, progress always goes up, man. Okay, our last question this week comes from first-time question asker Alejandro Front. Hi Shane. Hi Alejandro. What do you think of the rising cost of video games and specifically consoles? I live in South America, and if you think costs in the USA are bad, South America and Europe have it even worse. A PS5 that costs $500 USD in the US costs around $750 here. The Switch 2 is around $800 right now. Same with the games. If you buy at official retail stores, a $70 game in the US is around $100 here. It's really bad. So Alejandro has figured out something that it seems like a lot of other people have not figured out that live outside the US. And that is that PlayStation is screwing everybody else but Americans. And from a financial perspective, you get it, because it's PlayStation's biggest audience. Although it dominates in Europe, it's just that the user base isn't quite as big there. So the USA is its biggest market, and you understand why it would want to protect that. But it's protecting the USA at the expense of everyone else. So PlayStation keeps jacking up the prices of its consoles in every other territory. It leaves the US alone. As a person who lives in the United States, do I appreciate that? I guess. But as a human being, it sucks that the United States is the cause of all the problems with the inflation and everything that's happening around the world, prices rising everywhere. That's all our fault, but we're not getting punished for it by PlayStation. We're actually being rewarded. We're rewarded by the prices of consoles not going up. So it's a weird situation. And here's the thing that I think kind of shocks me more than anything is that people in these other territories aren't pissed off. You are, Alejandro. I can tell that you're angry about this, but what about everybody else? Again, PlayStation is by far the dominant platform in Europe. It is treating Europeans like complete trash. And you guys are just sitting there and taking it. What? Why are there hate campaigns over a black samurai or a girl in a samurai game, but PlayStation is robbing Europeans blind, and they just sit there and take it? Where's Gamergate? Why aren't they actually doing something good for once and actually helping other gamers? So, I hear you, man. It sucks. It's BS. I bought my PS5 at launch, so ultimately it hasn't affected me positive or negatively as far as inflation and price increases are concerned. I got mine for $500, and that's that. But there's still another 80, 90 million PlayStation 5s left to be sold, and they're all going to be bought at higher prices in these other territories. And you gotta stand up. You gotta say no. Start a campaign against that online. That's a legitimate campaign to start. That other sane people will be like, that makes sense. So do it. That's the only way. Or stop buying PlayStation. You gotta do something. Because right now, people in Europe, South America, all these territories are being taken advantage of by PlayStation. It's basically shoving the extra cost for Trump's tariffs onto every territory but the US. So if that bothers you, you need to stand up and do something, even if it's just a tweet. PlayStation can't change its behavior unless it knows that its fans are pissed off about its behavior. So maybe use that energy to go against PlayStation, who is really robbing you blind. Okay, that's it for another fiery edition of Ask Shane Anything right here on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. Thanks again for all the great questions. Another great round. If you like the show and you want to participate, and look, it doesn't matter if you give us money or not. We take questions from everybody. Go to Sifted.net, click the link in the header there. Go ask me a question on our forums, and we'll get into the show here. I do kind of need a backlog of questions here coming up for the Thanksgiving holiday and the Christmas holiday. So we need a bunch of questions that I can pull from. It'd be great if you could go over there and do that. If you like this show, or Game Face, or Pactor Factor, or Dossier, or anything else we're doing, it would be awesome if you could head over to patreon.com/sifted for $5 a month to get all our content early. If you pledge at that $7 Ask Shane tier, it guarantees that this show keeps going. If you pledge $1, it doesn't matter, you're awesome. So head on over there. If you like what we're doing, give us some consideration. That would be cool. Everybody have a great week, and don't forget, sleep is for the dead. Play games instead.